Hello and welcome to DSW's Endpoint Assessment for the Level 3 Insurance Practitioner Standard. My name's Isobel, I'm a product owner at DSW and I'll be talking you through this standard today. This recording is designed to give you an overview of what will happen during the endpoint assessment process, what to expect, when it will take place, but also how apprentices can prepare and what support is available. By the end of this, you should have a clear understanding of how the process will work and what the requirements are. And of course, if there are any questions or anything you need more information on, we'll show you where to go for any additional support at the end of the recording. So today we'll be discussing what the endpoint assessment process looks like, how and when it will be delivered, what happens during the assessment itself, and we'll go into more detail about the Insurance Practitioner Standard, how each assessment method works, and how it will be graded. What is endpoint assessment? This is what we call the series of assessments an apprentice must take to prove they're able to do the job for which they've been training. These take place once the on-programme period is complete and the apprentice is deemed ready for endpoint assessment. Assessment design and delivery. DSW create assessment materials in line with robust design principles that are recognised by Ofqual. These principles are validity, reliability and comparability, manageability, and minimising bias. This means you can be assured that our assessments are appropriate for the standard, that everyone will get the same experience, that the assessments will be consistent and fair, and that everyone will have a chance to succeed. When does endpoint assessment happen? Endpoint assessment begins when the on-programme phase has been completed, Level 2 Maths and English have been achieved, the mandatory professional qualifications have been partially achieved, and the employer and apprenticeship training provider agree that the apprentice is competent. This next stage is called Gateway, and it's when the apprentice begins preparing for the endpoint assessment process. What happens during endpoint assessment? The apprentice completes the assessments detailed in the assessment plan. There is still an expectation that the apprenticeship training provider will support the apprentices throughout the endpoint assessment period. This is to ensure that they're familiar with what's to come and so mock exams can be completed with them. In order to pass and be deemed competent, the apprentice must pass all of the assessments. This happens over a maximum of 6 months from the point they are approved for Gateway. Here we have an overview of the assessment methods used for the Insurance Practitioner Standard. It's made up of 3 components. We have a portfolio-based professional discussion which lasts for 60 minutes, a case study test which lasts for 45 minutes, and a multiple choice test. We'll look at each method in a bit more detail now. Portfolio of evidence. The portfolio is built up throughout the on-programme period and needs to be submitted at Gateway. You can upload your portfolio to EPA Pro as a zip folder, or you can provide us with a link to your ePortfolio platform. In the portfolio, we're looking for a blend of evidence, and although it's unassessed, it's really important that the apprentice puts in as much as they can in terms of demonstrating their competence with their best pieces of evidence. This will allow the endpoint assessor to explore that further and relate to specific pieces of evidence in the professional discussion. In their portfolio, they will need to demonstrate how they've applied the knowledge, skills and behaviours of the standard, and it should contain real work tasks that they've completed. We provide a referencing table in the toolkit so the apprentice can map the evidence in their portfolio to the relevant learning outcomes, and the portfolio will typically contain 12 pieces of evidence. The toolkit provides guidance on what types of evidence can be included in the portfolio and a steer on how to ensure that evidence is sufficient, authentic, relevant and current. Feedback on the portfolio will not be provided prior to the professional discussion taking place. Context statement. When we refer to a context statement, we want to know what the apprentice has done in a specific situation, who, what, where, why and when. Really building a picture behind a specific situation, and from there they can pull on pieces of product and performance evidence which demonstrate exactly what they've done in relation to their context statement. It's a great way for apprentices to bring all of their evidence together and give a more rounded picture of what they're capable of. They need to make sure they corroborate what they've said in their context statement with evidence, as the context statement is purely anecdotal. Evidence types. The portfolio evidence should be mapped against the pass and distinction descriptors listed in the portfolio referencing table. One piece of evidence could span several pass descriptors, so they could use one context statement and the additional pieces of evidence to cover multiple descriptors. There may also be descriptors which require more than one piece of evidence in order to meet them in full. A piece of evidence might be a single document, or it may be a folder containing a number of documents which link together. We're looking for quality rather than quantity. Have the apprentices think about examples of specific situations that they've been involved in which would allow them to demonstrate multiple areas of the standard with a blend of different evidence types. We'll go now on to different types of evidence. As you can see, there is a wide range of evidence types, and this list is absolutely not exhaustive. You may find that the evidence you choose is different to what appears here, which is absolutely fine as long as it's demonstrating the path and distinction descriptors. We do ask that videos and recordings are a maximum of 2 hours within the portfolio, and they need to be time-stamped in the referencing table so the assessor knows which part of the recording they need to look at. Evidence stipulations. All evidence must be clearly labelled, dated and referenced in the portfolio referencing table, which is embedded in the toolkit. All documents should be amended appropriately to ensure confidentiality and data protection are adhered to. Evidence must be sufficient. This means enough evidence must be produced to clearly meet all the relevant descriptors in full. Sufficient does not mean a mass of evidence. It simply means collecting enough quality evidence to demonstrate competence. Evidence must be authentic. Apprentices must be able to explain and substantiate the evidence put forward. It's important to ensure that only evidence relates to the apprentice's performance is submitted. There is a declaration to be completed at Gateway to confirm that evidence will be authentic. Evidence must be relevant. Any evidence must relate clearly to the descriptors, the job role and apprentice's performance. Avoid the inclusion of reference documents, training materials and other evidence that simply bulks out the portfolio. Evidence must be current. Current means evidence relating to knowledge, skills and behaviours that the apprentice currently demonstrates. These will tend to be their best work. Evidence should be gathered and collated in line with the timeframe specified by the standard. Any concerns relating to the currency of evidence being submitted should be discussed and agreed with the endpoint assessor. Professional discussion. The professional discussion will be in the form of a structured discussion between the apprentice and endpoint assessor. The aim of the discussion is to explore the content of the portfolio and the apprentice's journey in more detail. The apprentice will have the opportunity to show how they compiled their portfolio in more detail and discuss the learning they've undertaken since being on their apprenticeship. The purpose of the discussion is to assess the descriptors within the context of the apprentice's portfolio. The apprentice is expected to use their portfolio to support their responses. The professional discussion will need to take place in a suitable environment, free from interruption. It will last for 60 minutes with an additional 10% available to allow the apprentice to complete their last question. It will be made up of a minimum of 10 questions. The discussion will be completed remotely using WebEx or similar video conferencing software. The training provider will need to ensure that the apprentice is given support so they're comfortable with the technology and the environment ahead of the discussion. The apprentice will be required to show a valid form of identification and pan their camera around the room to ensure they're in a suitable environment prior to the discussion taking place. We strongly recommend the use of mock discussions to ensure the apprentice is aware of what is to come and so they're comfortable discussing their portfolio within the time frame. The apprentice may bring their portfolio and limited notes to the professional discussion. This is defined as being no more than 2 sides of A4 paper. Case study test. The case study test enables the apprentice to demonstrate their ability to diagnose insurance situations and identify appropriate outcomes. The case study test is delivered via one-to-one questioning with the independent assessor via WebEx or similar video conferencing software. It's based on 2 fictitious insurance scenarios which are tailored to the apprentice's chosen options of claims handler or loss adjuster, assistant underwriter or junior broker. The test is closed, which means the apprentice cannot refer to reference books or materials or take any kind of equipment into the test. The case studies and questions will not be made available to the apprentice prior to the test. However, a mock test is available for each pathway as a paper version and on question mark to enable the apprentice to familiarise themselves with the system. The case study test will need to take place in a suitable environment free from interruption. The training provider will need to ensure that the apprentice is given the support needed to ensure they're comfortable with the technology and environment ahead of the test. The test will last for 45 minutes and must be completed without breaks. The apprentice will be required to show valid ID and pan their camera around the room to ensure they're in a suitable environment prior to the case study test taking place. The assessor will ask the apprentice to log into their question mark account using the login details they were given at Gateway. The test will commence when the assessor asks the apprentice to launch the test so they're able to view the two scenarios. The apprentice will then have time without interruption to digest the information in both scenarios and make notes for their own use. The apprentice will be able to view the case study scenarios and make notes using question mark. This portion of the test will last for 15 minutes. In the remaining 30 minutes, the assessor will ask a minimum of 4 questions in relation to the 2 case study scenarios. The apprentice may be asked follow-up questions where clarification is required. Within their answers, apprentices are expected to demonstrate the following to meet the knowledge, skills and behaviours assigned to this component: that they have identified the key prevailing market conditions, their analysis of the customer data presented, and their rationale for their chosen outcome. During the question and answer portion of the test, the apprentice will be able to have access to the 2 scenarios, the appendices, and their notes. At the end of the test, the assessor will ask the apprentice to log out of question mark. The results for this component will be released within 5 working days of the assessment taking place. Multiple choice test. Once the apprentice has successfully passed the portfolio-based professional discussion and case study test, DSW will inform the relevant professional body that they're ready to take their final exam. The apprentice will then be able to book their test directly with the CII or CILA, depending on the professional qualification they're working towards. As DSW and the CII or CILA will need to communicate regarding specific apprentices, a consent form will need to be completed and submitted at Gateway. This will give DSW permission to inform the professional body that the apprentice has completed the required assessments and are ready to book their multiple choice test. It will also give the professional body permission to communicate the apprentice's results to DSW so their overall grade can be calculated. The consent form is available to download from EPA Pro. CII and CILA have mock tests available to support apprentices in preparation for their multiple choice test. The test is computer-based and it will be taken under exam conditions without breaks. Apprentices will not be able to take any reference books, materials or any kind of equipment into the exam. Following completion of the exam, the apprentice will have immediate access to their score. The CII or CILA will inform DSW of the apprentice's results so their overall endpoint assessment grade can be calculated and communicated to the training provider. The overall grade will be communicated within 5 working days of the multiple choice test being taken. The grades available for the multiple choice test are pass or fail. If a resit is required, this should be discussed with the relevant professional body. Scoring and grading. There are 3 levels of outcome for this standard: fail, pass and distinction. The individual assessment methods for the endpoint assessment are graded separately. The professional discussion underpinned by portfolio is graded as fail, pass or distinction. The case study test is graded as fail, pass or distinction, and the multiple choice is graded as fail or pass. The breakdown of grading shown on screen now is also provided in the toolkit. Thank you for watching. We hope this has been helpful. As always, we're happy to help if you have any questions or need any more information, so please do get in touch. You can email us at info@dswapprenticeships.co.uk or give us a call on 01302 760 008. Thank you.